There is something different about you, and you have known it for a long time. Not because someone told you, not because your life looked a certain way from the outside, but because deep inside, beneath the noise and the exhaustion and the years of wondering if any of it was going to change, there has always been this quiet, stubborn knowing. A knowing that you were not built for ordinary. A knowing that what you were carrying inside you was bigger than anything the world had yet made room for. And today, on the edge of what is about to happen this Friday, I need you to hear this clearly. You did not stumble across this message. You were guided here. Heaven did not send you here to leave empty-handed. You are a chosen one. And before you brush past that phrase, before your mind tells you that sounds too big or too spiritual or too far from where your life actually stands right now, I want you to stay with it. Because the chosen ones are rarely the ones who feel chosen. They are the ones who have spent years feeling overlooked, misunderstood, underestimated, and on the edge of giving up. They are the ones who have kept going anyway. They are the ones who have prayed through tears they could not explain. They are the ones who woke up on too many mornings wondering why it was still taking so long. That is not weakness. That is the signature of someone being prepared for something that ordinary people simply are not equipped to carry. There are signs that only chosen ones experience, and I want to name them right now because you need to recognize yourself in this. The first sign is that you have been having dreams that feel more real than your waking life. Not just random dreams, but dreams with weight, with detail, with a feeling that lingers long after you open your eyes. Dreams that sometimes make you feel like you were somewhere important, even if you cannot put words to where that was. The second sign is that you have been carrying a restlessness that has no clear explanation. You are not ungrateful. You have counted your blessings. But there is a low hum of frustration beneath the surface. A feeling like something is about to break open but has not yet, and no amount of distraction can quiet it. The third sign is that you have begun to feel like the spaces and the people that once fit you no longer do. Conversations that used to feel comfortable now feel hollow. Places that used to feel like home now feel like they belong to a version of you that is already gone, and you cannot quite explain why. So you have been sitting with that ache in silence. The fourth sign is that you keep encountering the same message in different places, a verse, a phrase, a word spoken by a stranger, a podcast you almost did not play, a video that found you at 3 a.m. when you should have been asleep. The same theme wrapping around you from different directions, as if the universe is trying to make sure you do not miss what it is saying. If you recognize yourself in any of those, then this message is not a coincidence. This message was placed in your path deliberately, and what is about to unfold over the next several minutes is going to speak to places in you that have been waiting for someone to finally name them. You are not here because of an algorithm. You are not here because of luck. You are here because the God who sees you, the one who has been watching every single season you have walked through, every door that closed, every prayer that felt like it disappeared into the ceiling, every night you chose to keep going even when you had no visible reason to, that God arranged this moment. He did not arrange it because you have everything figured out. He arranged it because the Friday that is coming is carrying something that belongs to you, and you needed to be ready to receive it. You were never meant to blend in. You were never designed to settle for the life that was easy or expected or comfortable. There has always been something inside you that resisted mediocrity, even when mediocrity would have been so much simpler. That resistance is not restlessness without purpose. That resistance is calling. That resistance is the fingerprint of someone who was made to stand in places where most people are afraid to stand, to say things that most people are afraid to say, to carry hope into rooms that have never seen it. The chosen ones are not chosen because they have been perfect. They are chosen because they have been willing. Willing to stay, willing to believe, even on the days when believing felt like the most unreasonable thing a person could do. And you have been willing. You are here, which means you have been willing right up to this moment. This Friday is not just another day on the calendar. Something in the spiritual atmosphere around your life is about to shift, and this message is the preparation for that shift. What you receive in the next several minutes is going to change how you see the waiting, how you see the silence, and how you step into what is already moving toward you. You have not been waiting for this moment. This moment has been waiting for you. There is a particular kind of pain that belongs only to the chosen ones, and it is not the pain of failure. It is the pain of knowing, the pain of carrying something inside you that you cannot fully explain, cannot fully hand to another person, cannot fully put down even when the weight of it becomes almost unbearable. You have lived inside that pain, not for a week or a month, but for seasons that stretched long enough to make you question everything you thought you knew about yourself, about timing, about whether any of this was ever going to change. And what makes it harder is that no one around you has had the right words for it. The people who love you have tried. They have said things like, just be patient, or your time is coming, or everything happens for a reason. And you have nodded, because you did not want to seem ungrateful, because you did not want to burden them further, because somewhere inside you still believed those things were probably true. But the words never quite landed in the place that needed them, because the place that needed them was not your mind. It was something deeper, something that logic cannot fully reach. So today, before we go any further, I want to do something that I believe this message was designed to do. I want to name what you have been feeling, not to perform understanding, but because when something is finally named, it loses some of its power to isolate you, and you have been isolated inside this long enough. Here are 4 things that only the people in a season of waiting will recognize, and I want you to notice how deeply you know these. The first is the wave of grief that comes without warning. You will be going about your day, doing something ordinary, and suddenly a wave of sadness rises up from somewhere beneath everything, and it has no clean label. It is not depression exactly, though it can feel like it. It is not regret exactly, though it has some of that texture. It is grief for the years that moved without the breakthrough arriving. Grief for a version of your life that you were certain was coming, and that kept not coming. And because there is nothing specific to point to, because there has been no singular loss you can name to other people, you have carried that grief quietly, putting it back down before anyone could ask too many questions. The second is the way that certain people and certain places have begun to feel heavy. People you have known for years, spaces you have occupied comfortably, routines that once gave you stability. There is a distance now that you did not ask for and did not manufacture. It is not that you love these people less. It is not that you are ungrateful for what those spaces have given you. It is that you are growing in a direction that those people and places were not built to accommodate. And some part of you already knows it, even if you are not ready to say it out loud yet. The belonging that used to feel natural now requires a kind of performance that exhausts you, and you go home from certain gatherings feeling more alone than when you arrived. The third is the dream, or the recurring image, of a door. It may not always look like a door literally. Sometimes it is a threshold. Sometimes it is a gate. Sometimes it is simply the feeling of standing at the edge of something and being unable to see what is on the other side. But it comes back. It keeps returning. And there is something in that dream that is not frightening so much as it is unfinished. Like you are being shown something that is almost ready to be revealed, but the full picture has not yet been given to you. You wake from it with a feeling you cannot shake for hours. The fourth is the way the same message keeps finding you. A verse you read years ago surfaces again. A phrase in a sermon, then in a book, then in a conversation with someone who had no idea they were carrying something meant for you. The word now, the word appointed, the word ready, the theme of a door opening, a season changing, a shift that is not just possible but imminent. It keeps appearing in different forms, different mouths, different formats. And you have started to wonder if that is coincidence, or if something is trying to make sure you do not miss what is being said. I want to name the specific pains underneath all of this, because they deserve to be acknowledged before they are reframed. You have not been sleeping the way you should. Not because your body does not want rest, but because your mind will not stop moving. The nighttime hours are when the questions get loudest, the wondering about what is taking so long, the replay of choices you made that you are still not sure were right, the calculations about where you thought you would be by now and where you actually are. Sleep becomes a negotiation instead of a refuge, and you have woken up tired more mornings than you can count. You have felt a loneliness that is different from being alone. You can be in a full room and feel it. You can be mid-conversation with someone who cares about you and feel it. It is the loneliness of carrying a call that has not yet found its full expression, of having something to offer that has not yet had the right stage, of being seen by people who love you, but not yet being fully known by the world that needs what you carry. It is a specific ache, and it is one that the chosen ones know better than almost anyone. There have been moments when you genuinely wondered if you had gotten it wrong, if the voice you thought you heard, the sense of purpose you thought you felt, was a story you told yourself to make the years more bearable. The doubt is not a sign that your faith is broken. The doubt is a sign that you are human, and that you have been waiting long enough for the weight of the weight to press against your certainty. But here is what I want you to know about that doubt. It has not stopped you. You are still here. You are still showing up. You are still choosing to believe even when the evidence has been thin. That is not weakness. That is the specific quality of faith that gets people through the wilderness and into what is waiting on the other side of it. You have also felt deeply misunderstood, not by everyone, but by enough people that it has worn something down in you. The people who told you that you were being unrealistic, the ones who interpreted your stillness as laziness, your waiting as avoidance, your refusal to settle as arrogance. The ones who gave you advice that was practical and reasonable and completely wrong for where you were actually going. Being misunderstood by people who mean well is one of the quieter forms of loneliness, and you have held it with a kind of grace that I do not think you have given yourself enough credit for. Now I want to offer you a reframe, and I want to do it carefully, because I know you have heard versions of this before, and they have not always landed the way they were meant to. There is a difference between being overlooked and being positioned. When something is overlooked, it is forgotten. It is passed by. It has no designated place in what is coming. But when something is positioned, it is placed deliberately by someone who knows exactly what they are doing and exactly what that thing will be needed for. The positioning might look identical to being overlooked from the outside. Both involve waiting, Both involve seasons where nothing visible is happening. Both involve watching others move forward while you seem to stay still. But the internal reality is completely different. Overlooked means abandoned. Positioned means prepared. And everything you have been walking through, every season that has stretched beyond what felt reasonable, every door that did not open when you pushed on it, has been positioning, not abandonment. God has not been ignoring you. He has been arranging things on a level you cannot currently see, coordinating people and circumstances and timing that would not make sense to you, yet even He tried to explain it. He has been building the version of story that will make what you are walking into sustainable and significant and real. The delay was not punishment. The delay was construction. And this Friday, something in that construction is going to become visible to you. Not everything, but enough. Enough to confirm that the waiting was not wasted. Enough to show you that the positioning was real. Enough to make the years of holding on make a different kind of sense. You are not someone who was passed by. You are someone who was set apart. There is a reason you have felt different. There is a reason ordinary felt wrong, even when ordinary would have been easier. There is a reason the spaces that fit other people have never fully fit you. You were not made for those spaces. You were made for the one that is being prepared for you right now, in this season, ahead of this Friday. If you are sitting with any of this and feeling the recognition rise up in your chest, that quiet, yes, that is me. That is exactly what this has felt like. Then I want you to type one word in the comments right now. Type the words "I see it." Not because it changes the algorithm, though it does help this message find others who need it, but because naming something out loud, even in a comment, even in 2 words, is an act of agreement. It is you saying, I recognize what is happening. I receive what is being said. So type "I see it," and know that thousands of people around the world are typing those same words today. Because you are not walking this season alone, not even close. And if this message is finding you at a moment when you need it to go further, when you want to share what is landing right now with someone else who has been in their own version of this long season, please like this video and share it with them directly, not with a long explanation. Just send it and let the message do what it was designed to do. Subscribe so that when the next word comes, it finds you without delay. Because what is coming in the rest of this message is going to take everything you just received and build something with it that you are not going to want to miss. Before I give you the practice, I want to stay with you for just one more moment in what was just named. Because something happened in Fun 2 that I do not want you to rush past. When the grief was named, when the loneliness was named, when the specific ache of being misunderstood was finally put into words, something in you shifted, even if only slightly. You felt it. That shift is not small. That shift is the beginning of what this entire message is building toward. So carry that with you as we move into what comes next, because the practice I am about to give you is not a technique designed for people who have it all together. It is a tool designed for people exactly where you are right now, in the middle of a long season, carrying more than they have been given credit for, standing closer to a threshold than they realize. There is something I have observed about chosen ones in the middle of their waiting seasons. They are often the most disciplined people in the room when it comes to doing things for others. They show up for the people they love. They carry responsibilities without complaint. They push through when pushing through costs them something real. But when it comes to practices that are purely for their own inner world, practices that are about tending to the frequency of their own soul, they let those go first. They tell themselves they will get to it when things calm down, when the season shifts, when there is more time, more energy, more certainty about what they are even supposed to be doing. And so the inner world gets quieter and quieter, not because it has nothing to say, but because it has not been given the conditions to speak. Today that changes. And it changes not with something complicated, not with something that requires an hour of your morning or a complete restructuring of your life. It changes with something you can do anywhere, in any season, regardless of how full or how empty your schedule feels right now. I want to introduce you to something I call the threshold protocol. It is 3 steps, simple enough to remember without writing down, powerful enough to begin shifting the internal atmosphere of your days starting today. And the reason I am giving it to you now, in this part of the message, is because what you are about to receive in the next section is going to land differently in a person who has already begun practicing this. The threshold protocol is not just a morning exercise. It is a way of positioning yourself internally to receive what is already moving toward you. Here is how it works. Step 1 is what I call the grace of the no. I want you to take 60 seconds, right now or at the first quiet moment you have today, and think of one thing that did not happen in your life that you are grateful, on some level, did not happen. Not the things you are obviously glad about, not the easy ones. I want you to think of something that at the time felt like a loss, a rejection, a closed door that you genuinely mourned, a relationship that did not work out, an opportunity that went to someone else, a plan you had to abandon, a version of your future that fell apart before it could be built. I want you to hold that thing, and I want you to ask yourself honestly, quietly, without performing the answer for anyone, what would my life look like right now if that had gone the way I wanted it to go? And then I want you to sit with whatever answer rises, because for many chosen ones, when they do this honestly, what they find is that the closed door they grieved was protecting them from something they did not have the perspective to see at the time. The relationship that ended was making space for something their heart actually needed. The opportunity that went to someone else was redirecting them towards something they were actually built for. The grace of the no is one of the most underutilized forms of gratitude, and it is one of the most powerful ways to begin trusting the architecture of your own story. You do not have to feel grateful in a performed way. You do not have to tie a bow around the pain of what that closed door cost you. This step is simply about honest reflection, about opening your eyes to the possibility that the hand that closed certain doors was the same hand that is now preparing to open the one that this Friday is connected to. 1 minute, one thing. The grace of the no. Step 2 is what I call the declaration of now. After you have done Step 1, I want you to speak a single sentence out loud, not in your head. Out loud, even if it is barely above a whisper. Even if you are alone in your car, or in a bathroom at work, or in a room where you feel self-conscious saying things out loud. The sentence is this: the season I have been in was preparing me for the season I am entering, and I enter it now. You do not have to feel the full weight of that sentence when you say it. You do not have to have complete certainty when the word now comes out of your mouth. What you are doing in this step is not performing certainty. You are practicing alignment. You are speaking into the atmosphere of your own life a declaration that is rooted not in what you can see, but in what you have been given reason to believe. There is a concept we are going to explore in much more depth in the section ahead. The idea that time is not only linear, that there is a kind of appointed time that operates outside of the calendar and the clock. But for now, step 2 is simply this: speak the declaration. Let your voice make contact with the air around you. Let the words leave your body and enter the room. The declaration of now. Step 3 is the one that everything in this message has been quietly preparing you for. It is 7 minutes of intentional silence, not sleep, not distraction, not background noise while you scroll through something else. 7 minutes of actual stillness where you close your eyes, set a timer, and simply allow your mind to settle without chasing it. You do not have to meditate in any formal sense. You do not have to achieve anything in those 7 minutes. You do not have to feel anything in particular or have any significant inner experience. The instruction is simply to be still, to stop producing and consuming for 7 minutes and allow the inner world to breathe. I want to explain why 7 minutes specifically, because this is not an arbitrary number, and the explanation for it is going to open a door into something I need to share with you about how your brain, and specifically the brain of a chosen one in an active season of calling, actually functions. There is research, serious neuroscientific research, that has been exploring the relationship between intentional stillness and the activation of specific brainwave states. And what that research has found about the 7-minute threshold is going to connect directly to something I am going to give you access to in just a moment. But first, I want to make sure you understand what the threshold protocol is actually doing, not just what it asks you to do. Step 1. The grace of the no is repositioning your relationship to your past. It is shifting your interpretation of the years behind you from a story about what was taken from you to a story about what was being arranged for you. That is a fundamental internal shift, and it changes the frequency at which you move through your days. Step 2. The declaration of now is repositioning your relationship to time itself. It is refusing the lie that what belongs to you is somehow permanently out of reach, and replacing it with the spoken, embodied belief that the appointed season has already begun. And step 3, the 7 minutes of silence, is doing something that most people in the modern world almost never do. It is creating internal space that is not filled with content, not filled with to-do lists, not filled with the noise of comparison or anxiety or the endless management of everyone else's needs. 7 minutes of space where the frequency of your own soul can actually be heard. Because here is what I have seen happen again and again in the lives of chosen ones who are in the final stretch of a long waiting season. Breakthrough does not arrive when everything externally aligns. The breakthrough arrives when the person becomes internally still enough to recognize what has already been moving toward them. You cannot catch something with your hands full. You cannot hear a whisper in a room full of noise. The 7 minutes of silence in the threshold protocol is not passive. It is one of the most active things you can do for the season you are in, because it is creating the conditions inside you for the recognition of what is already on its way. Now I want to speak to the part of you that just heard 7 minutes of silence and immediately felt resistance. That resistance is real, and it is worth acknowledging. Some of you have not been still in a very long time, not because you are lazy or undisciplined, but because stillness has become the place where the grief and the questions and the unanswered longings get the loudest. Silence can feel like a confrontation with everything you have been managing by staying busy. And so the idea of sitting alone with yourself without anything to do or consume or produce can feel more daunting than it sounds from the outside. I want to tell you that what you are afraid of, meeting in the silence, is not what you think it is. What feels like an enemy waiting for you in the quiet is actually the deeper part of yourself that has been trying to get your attention through the restlessness, through the dreams, through the recurring messages that keep finding you. The quiet is not where the fear lives. The quiet is where the clarity lives, and the chosen one who learns to enter that quiet, even for 7 minutes, even imperfectly, even when the first 3 minutes feel like white knuckling through the discomfort of stillness. That chosen one is giving themselves access to something that no amount of striving or producing or searching can manufacture. The threshold protocol. Step 1, the grace of the no. Step 2, the declaration of now. Step 3, 7 minutes of intentional silence. 3 steps. No equipment required. No prior experience necessary. No particular time of day mandatory, though the morning creates a specific kind of momentum that carries through the rest of your hours. You can do this on a lunch break. You can do this after you put the children to bed. You can do this in the parking lot before you walk into a building that is asking more of you than it has any right to ask. Anywhere, any day, including today. And what I am going to share with you next is something that is going to make the 7 minutes of Step 3 not only more accessible, but significantly more powerful. Because there is a specific tool that was developed over more than 30 years of neuroscientific research. A tool that works directly with the brainwave states that the silence in Step 3 is designed to activate. And that tool was built for exactly this. For people in the middle of something significant. For people who carry more than they have been given language for. For people who are standing at the edge of a threshold and need their internal world to match the weight of what is about to come through. What that tool is, where it came from, and what it has done for thousands of people who were in seasons that looked a great deal like yours. That is what is coming next. And I do not want you to move past this moment without first taking a breath and recognizing what you have just received. The threshold protocol is yours. It does not require anything from you except the willingness to begin. And that willingness, as you have already shown by being here this far into this message, is something you have always had. There is something that the researchers did not expect to find. And when they found it, it changed the direction of an entire field of study. They were not looking for a spiritual discovery. They were looking for a neurological one. They were mapping brainwave activity across different populations, across different ages, different backgrounds, different levels of cognitive performance. And what they kept finding across thousands of subjects over decades of study was a pattern that could not be explained by conventional models of brain function alone. Pattern was this. The people who demonstrated the highest levels of creative output, intuitive problem solving, emotional resilience, and what the researchers began calling breakthrough cognition. Those people shared a specific brainwave signature. Not the same personality, not the same background, not the same life circumstances, but the same frequency. And when the researchers looked more closely at what was producing that frequency, they found something that stopped them in their tracks. The frequency was not being generated by effort. It was not being generated by intelligence or discipline or years of practice in any conventional sense. It was being generated by a state of internal stillness combined with a specific kind of open receptivity. A state that, neurologically speaking, the brain enters when it is neither actively striving nor passively checked out. A state that sits in a particular bandwidth between deep relaxation and full alertness. A state that, in the language of brainwave science, is called theta. And layered on top of that theta foundation, in the people who were demonstrating the most remarkable levels of cognitive and creative breakthrough, was something even more powerful. A higher frequency band that neuroscientists have come call gamma, the wave of insight, the wave of synthesis, the wave that fires in the brain in the moment before a person says, out loud or inside themselves, I understand now. I see it now. I know what to do. The researchers who were doing this work came from institutions whose names you would recognize. And one of the scientists who became most deeply invested in understanding what was producing this brainwave signature. And more importantly, whether it could be deliberately activated in people who were not naturally falling into it, was a neuroscientist named Dr. James Rivers. Dr. Rivers spent more than 30 years studying the relationship between sound, frequency, and brainwave states. His work intersected with research being done at some of the most prestigious scientific institutions in the world, including work connected to programs at MIT and NASA. Programs that were studying how human cognitive performance could be optimized under conditions of extreme pressure and uncertainty. The same conditions, interestingly, that describe the lives of most chosen ones in the middle of a long and demanding season. What Dr. Rivers and his team discovered over those decades of research was both simple and profound. The brain, it turns out, is extraordinarily responsive to external frequency. It does not passively resist the frequencies around it. It synchronizes with them. This is a phenomenon called brainwave entrainment, and it is not new science. The principle has been documented for well over a century. But what was new, what Dr. Rivers and his team contributed to the understanding of this phenomenon, was the precise mapping of which frequencies produced which internal states, and the development of an audio protocol specifically designed to guide the brain into theta and gamma states. If feeding is sustainable and accessible to people who had no prior experience with meditation, neuroscience, or any kind of formal brain training. The result of that work is called the Genius Wave. It is a 7-minute audio track. That is it. 7 minutes. And the reason 7 minutes is the specific duration is not arbitrary. It reflects decades of research into the threshold at which the brain can be effectively guided into theta-gamma synchronization without creating cognitive fatigue or sensory overwhelm. Less than 7 minutes, and the entrainment process does not have enough time to reach full depth. More than 7 minutes and the brain begins to compensate in ways that reduce the effectiveness of the entrainment. 7 minutes is the window, the precise window that the research identified and that Dr. Rivers built the protocol around. And I want you to notice something about that number, because you have already encountered it today. Step 3 of the threshold protocol that I gave you in the previous section asks for 7 minutes of intentional silence. That was not an accident. The 7 minutes of silence in the threshold protocol is designed to be done with the Genius Wave audio as your companion. Because what the audio does during those 7 minutes is exactly what the silence is designed to create space for. It guides your brain, gently and without effort on your part, into the specific frequency state where the insights, the clarity, the creative solutions, and the internal breakthroughs that the chosen one in you has been waiting for become neurologically accessible. You do not have to meditate. You do not have to have any skill. You do not have to focus on anything or achieve any particular internal state through willpower. You simply put on your headphones, press play, and allow the precisely engineered audio frequencies to do what they were designed to do. The binaural beats and isochronic tones embedded in the recording create a specific sound environment that your brain naturally synchronizes with, moving you out of the high-frequency beta state that most of us live in almost constantly, the state of stress, urgency, mental noise, and reactivity, and into the theta-gamma state, where everything the chosen one in you needs to access becomes available. Now, I want to tell you about someone who used this tool in a season that I think you will recognize. Her name is not important, but her circumstances are. She had been in a professional waiting season for nearly 4 years. She had the skills. She had the clarity of purpose. She had done the work, the internal work and the external work that she believed was required for the doors she was standing in front of to open. And they had not opened, not for 4 years. She was not depressed, but she was exhausted. She was not without faith, but her faith had become thin in places. She started using the genius wave, not because she was convinced it would change anything, but because she had nothing to lose, and the 7 minutes fit into a schedule that had almost no margin in it. Within 3 weeks, she reported something she did not have a clean clinical word for. She described it as a quieting of the internal noise that had been running underneath everything for years. And from that quieting, she said, things began to surface, not dramatically, not overnight, but clarity that had been buried under the noise of striving and managing and enduring began to become accessible again. Within 2 months, she had made 2 decisions, small ones by external measures, that redirected her professional path in a way that opened a door that had not been visible to her before. She told the person who recommended the genius wave to her that the 7 minutes had not changed her circumstances. It had changed her capacity to perceive what was already possible within them. And that perceptual shift changed everything. That is one story. There are thousands of others. People who used this tool in seasons of financial uncertainty and found clarity about decisions they had been paralyzed in front of. People who used it in seasons of relational complexity and found the emotional capacity to navigate those relationships from a different place. People who used it in seasons of creative drought and found the wellspring opening again. The consistent thread across those thousands of stories is not that the genius wave did something magical or external. It is that it created the internal conditions that made what was already available, already possible, already moving toward them, something they could actually receive and act on. I know that some of you are sitting with a thought right now that I want to name directly, because I respect you enough to address it before you have to ask it. You are thinking that $39 is not nothing, and you are right. $39 is not nothing. For some of you, that number represents a real decision, not a casual one. And I want to acknowledge that honestly, without trying to dismiss it or talk you out of the feeling, because the feeling is legitimate. You have been in a season that has required you to be careful, to be wise with what you have, to make decisions that count. That is not scarcity thinking. That is stewardship. And stewardship is a quality that chosen ones understand deeply. So let me say this carefully. The Genius Wave normally carries a price of $49. Through the link in the pinned comment below this video, it is available today for $39. That $10 difference reflects a decision Dr. Rivers and his team made specifically to make this tool accessible to people who are in active seasons of transition and preparation. People who need it most and who often have the least financial margin for discretionary spending. The $39 investment comes with a 90-day money-back guarantee. Not 30 days, 90 days. 3 full months of using this tool, genuinely using it as it was designed to be used, giving it the 7 minutes a day it requires. And if at any point in those 90 days you do not feel that it has delivered something real and valuable to your internal life, you contact the team and you receive every dollar back. No complicated process, no questions designed to make you feel bad for asking, a full return. Because the research and the thousands of testimonials have made the team confident enough in what this tool does to stand behind it with a guarantee that removes the risk from your decision. There is one more thing I need to say. about how you access the genius wave, and I want you to hear this clearly. There is only one legitimate source for this product. It is the link in the pinned comment beneath this video, not a search result, not a third-party site that appears to be offering the same thing, not a version you find anywhere other than that pinned link. The reason I am being specific about this is that the demand for this tool has created a market for imitations and unauthorized versions. And those versions do not contain the precisely calibrated frequency protocol that Dr. Rivers developed over 30 years of research. They use the name but not the science, and using an imprecise version of a frequency tool is not a neutral experience. It simply does not work. So if the genius wave is something that resonates with where you are right now, and if the 7 minutes of the threshold protocol is something you are ready to take seriously, then the only place to access what I am describing is the link in the pinned comment. I want you to have the real thing because you are in a real season, and you deserve a tool that was built with the same seriousness with which you have been walking through it. This offer is not permanent. The $39 price point is available for a limited time and to a limited number of people. When the threshold is reached, the price returns to $49 and this specific access window closes. I am not saying that to create pressure that is not real. I am saying it because I would not forgive myself for giving you everything else in this message and then being vague about the one practical tool I am pointing you toward. The window is open. The link is in the pinned comment. And the Friday that this message has been building toward is going to be met by a version of you who is either more internally prepared or less internally prepared for what it is carrying. The genius wave is one of the most direct paths I know to the former. What you just received is not a sales pitch. What you just received is the scientific language for something. The spiritual language of this entire message has been describing from the beginning the frequency of the chosen one. The brainwave state that belongs to people who carry more than average, who see more than average, who are built for more than average. It already lives in you. The genius wave is simply the tool that helps you access it consistently in 7 minutes a day, starting today. There is a thread that connects everything you just received about the genius wave to what I need to say to you now, and I want to hold that thread carefully as we move into this next place together. Because what the science named, what the brainwave research identified, and what Dr. Rivers spent 30 years trying to make accessible is something that the chosen ones have always known intuitively but rarely been given permission to say out loud. That the depth of what you carry inside you is real. That the frequency you operate at is different. That the internal world of a person who has been through what you have been through is not diminished by the waiting. It is deepened by it. And that depth has come at a cost that I do not want to skip past. I do not want to move from the science directly into the inspiration without first sitting down with you in the honest acknowledgement of what these years have actually taken from you. Because the chosen ones I have walked alongside over the years have told me again and again that one of the things they needed most was not someone to reframe the pain quickly. It was someone to first acknowledge that the pain was real and that it mattered, and that the cost was significant. So that is what I am going to do right now. And I want you to receive this, not as something that will make you feel worse, but as something that will finally allow you to feel seen in a way that the polished, inspirational version of your story has not always made room for. The years of waiting have taken things from you, real things. Things that cannot be fully recovered by simply receiving what is coming next. even if what is coming next is everything you have been believing for. And those things deserve to be named before we talk about what is ahead. The first thing the waiting took was certain relationships that will never be exactly what they could have been. There were people in your life who were ready to walk a certain with you at a certain time, and because your season did not move the way everyone expected, those connections drifted or ended or calcified into something smaller than what they were meant to be. There were friendships that could have gone deeper if the circumstances had aligned differently. There were romantic possibilities that closed because the timing of your season did not match the timing of another person's readiness. There were family dynamics that hardened in ways they might not have if the breakthrough had come earlier. If you had been able to show up with the fullness that was waiting inside you, instead of the exhaustion and the guardedness that a long season produces. Those relational losses are real. They happened. And no amount of beautiful language about divine positioning changes the fact that certain connections existed in a window that is now closed. And you will carry that awareness forward even into the goodness of what is coming. The second thing the waiting took was the forward momentum of your professional life or your sense of purpose in ways that have left marks. There were opportunities that required a version of you that was not yet available, not because you lacked talent or intelligence or capability, but because the internal conditions of a long waiting season do not always produce the external confidence and presence that certain doors require. There were seasons when you should have been building, should have been compounding, should have been visible in ways that would have set a foundation for what came after. And instead, you were managing, enduring, keeping yourself together enough to keep going. The career that could have been further along by now, the platform that could have been larger, the skills that could have been sharper if you had not spent so much of your energy simply surviving the season rather than thriving inside it. That is a real cost. It represents years you cannot get back in the conventional sense, and the chosen one who is honest with themselves knows that the third thing the waiting took was your freedom to dream without immediately bracing for disappointment. There was a version of you earlier in this journey who could hold a big dream with open hands, who could speak about what they believed was coming without the protective instinct to hedge, to qualify, to add enough disclaimers that the dream could not fully damage them if it did not arrive on schedule. That version of you has been replaced, at least partially, by someone who has learned to hold hopes more carefully, more quietly, sometimes more privately, because the years of holding on to things that did not arrive when you expected them taught you a kind of self-protection that now lives in you as a reflex. You no longer speak your dreams to just anyone. You no longer let yourself fully feel the magnitude of what you are believing for without simultaneously preparing yourself for the possibility that it might still be further away than you think. That protective layer has served you in some ways, but it has also cost you something. The uninhibited, unguarded, full-hearted dreaming that belongs to a person who has not yet been worn down by a long season. That cost is real. The fourth thing the waiting took was a portion of your trust in your own perception. You have heard the voice. You have felt the call. You have had the experiences, the dreams, the signs, the recurring messages, the moments of clarity that confirmed for you that you were on the right path and that what you were carrying was real and significant. And then time passed, and the confirmation did not arrive in the way or the speed that you expected, and the reasonable human response to that kind of gap between what was perceived and what materialized was to begin quietly questioning the perception itself. Did I really hear what I thought I heard? Was the clarity I felt actually clarity? Or was it wishful thinking dressed in spiritual clothing? Am I someone who genuinely carries something? Or am I someone who needs to believe that in order to keep going? Those questions are not signs of faithlessness. They are the inevitable result of a long and demanding season, pressing against the places inside you that had not yet been fully fortified. But they have taken something: the ease of trusting your own inner knowing, the confidence of moving from a place of certainty about what you are carrying. That has been one of the quieter and more significant costs of the years you have walked through. I am not naming these things to wound you. I am naming them because they are the truth of what this season has cost, and the chosen one who enters what is coming next without first acknowledging those costs will carry them unconsciously into the new season in ways that will complicate the very goodness that is arriving. The grief that is not named becomes the weight that slows the stride, and you have been carrying unnamed grief for long enough. Now I want to sit with you for a moment in the company of someone who knows this terrain from the inside, not from a distance. Not from the comfortable position of someone looking back on a completed story, but from the middle of it, from the darkest part of it, before the ending was visible. His name was Joseph, and if you know his story, I want you to hold just the part that is rarely dwelled on long enough. The part that came before the vindication. Joseph was a young man who carried a dream, a specific, vivid, undeniable dream about what his life was going to mean and what role he was going to play. And then, for reasons that from the outside looked like nothing more than terrible luck and the cruelty of people who should have protected him, everything went wrong. He was thrown into a pit by his own brothers. He was sold. He was trafficked into slavery in a foreign country. He served faithfully and was falsely accused and thrown into prison. He interpreted a dream for a man who promised to remember him and forgot him for 2 full years. Every reasonable expectation of how a chosen life should unfold was violated, repeatedly, without apparent reason or resolution. I want you to sit in the prison with Joseph for just a moment. Not the Joseph who eventually becomes the second most powerful man in Egypt. Not the Joseph who gets to see the full picture and understand what every season was preparing him for. The Joseph who is in the cell, who has been there long enough that the injustice has stopped feeling like a plot point and started feeling like a permanent reality. Who has prayed prayers that have not been answered in any visible way. Who has watched other people walk free while he remains. Who has used every internal resource available to him to keep his identity intact in conditions that were designed to destroy it. That Joseph, the one in the middle of it. The one who did not yet know that the morning was coming, because that Joseph, the one in the cell, is the version of Joseph that most of the chosen ones I have ever spoken with actually identify with. Not the triumphant ending, the enduring middle. The place where the dream is still alive, but the evidence for it has been thin for a very long time. The place where the question is no longer whether you will survive this, because you have already survived more than you thought you could, but whether surviving it is the same as it meaning something. Whether the cost is going to be worth what arrives on the other side. I am not going to tell you the ending of Joseph's story right now, because this is not that part of this message. This part of this message is simply the honest sitting with the cost. The acknowledgement that the pit was real, the cell was real, the years were real, the forgetting was real, and the person who walked through all of that and kept their integrity and their inner knowing intact, that person paid a price that the triumphant ending does not erase, even as it redeems it. You have paid a price. The years have taken things that mattered And before we walk into what is coming, before we step into the language of what is shifting and what is arriving and what this Friday is carrying, I needed you to know that I see the cost, that this message sees the cost, that the God who has been watching your season, not from a distance but from inside it with you, sees the cost, and that what is coming is not indifferent to what it took to get here. What is coming knows the full price that was paid, and it is arriving with a weight and a significance that is proportional to exactly that. I want to give you something now that I believe is going to change the way you understand every season you have ever walked through, including this one. Not just emotionally, not just spiritually, but at the level of how you think about time itself. Because one of the most disorienting things about a long waiting season is that it does not make sense inside the framework of time that most of us were handed. The framework that says time moves forward in a straight line, that progress is measured by visible movement, that value is determined by speed, and that the longer something takes, the less likely it is to be real or significant or coming at all. That framework has been one of the cruelest companions of your waiting season. Not because it is entirely wrong about everything, but because it is completely wrong about the kind of time that governs the lives of chosen ones. So I want to introduce you to a different framework, one that is not new. In fact, it is ancient. It comes from a language and a worldview that understood something about time that the modern world has largely forgotten. And once you hear it, once it settles into you, I believe you are going to find that it recontextualizes not just the season you are in, but every season you have walked through that felt like it was running on the wrong clock. Before I share it with you, let me name the emotional core of where you are right now. Because this framework was made for exactly this feeling. The feeling is this: you have been faithful, you have been consistent. You have not walked away from the belief that something significant is coming, even on the days when walking away would have been so much easier. And yet from the outside, from the perspective of the only kind of time most people know how to measure, it looks like nothing has happened. It looks like the years went by and the ground did not move. And that gap between the faithfulness you know you have shown and the visible results that have not yet arrived is one of the most quietly devastating gaps a person can live inside. I want you to know that the framework I am about to give you was made for people living inside exactly that gap. The ancient Greeks had two distinct words for time. Two words that pointed to two entirely different realities that we in the modern world collapse into a single concept and then wonder why our experience of time so often feels wrong. The first word was chronos. Chronos is the time you can measure it, is the time on the clock, the date on the calendar, the number of years that have passed since you first began believing for something. Chronos moves forward at a fixed and merciless rate. It does not care about your readiness. It does not pause for your process. It does not accelerate when you are desperate or slow down when you need more space to prepare. It simply moves, second by second, day by day, year by year, with the indifference of a machine that has no awareness of what it is measuring. Most of the world lives entirely inside Chronos, and when you measure a waiting season with Chronos as your only tool, it will always look like loss. It will always look like delay. It will always look like the evidence is accumulating against the promise rather than toward it. But the second word the Greeks had for time was kairos, and kairos is something else entirely. Kairos is the appointed moment, the right time, the fullness of time. It is not measured in seconds or years. It is measured in readiness, in alignment, in the convergence of all the elements that need to be in place before a thing can happen, in a way that will hold, in a way that will last, in a way that will produce what it was intended to produce, rather than a premature version of it that collapses under the weight of its own incompleteness. Kairos does not move at a fixed rate. It arrives, and when it arrives with a completeness and a specificity that Chronos could never manufacture on its own, because Chronos does not know what it is building toward. Kairos does. Here is what I want you to understand about where you are standing right now. The years you have been measuring in Chronos, the years that have looked like delay and stagnation and evidence accumulating against the promise, those years have been Kairos years. They have not been empty. They have not been wasted. They have been the years in which everything that needed to be assembled inside you and around you was being assembled. The character that needed to be formed, the compassion that needed to be deepened, the wisdom that needed to be earned through experience that could not have been shortcut, the relationships that needed to end so that the right ones could begin, the doors that needed to close so that the weight of your attention and your energy could be redirected toward the one that is now opening. None of that happened on a Chronos timeline. All of it happened on a Kairos one. And the Kairos moment that this Friday is connected to is not a reward for your performance. It is not something you earned by being patient enough or faithful enough or spiritually disciplined enough. It is a positioning. The arrival of a moment that was appointed before you fully understood what you were being prepared for. Now I want to give you a second concept, one that comes from a different ancient language, but that speaks directly to the same truth from a different angle. In the Hebrew language, there is a word that is often translated into English as wait. The word is kava. And for most of us who grew up with the English translation, waiting sounds passive. It sounds like sitting still. It sounds like the absence of action, the suspension of progress, the gap between what is and what is supposed to be. But kava does not mean any of those things. The root meaning of kava is to bind together, to twist, to braid strands around each other in a way that creates something stronger than any single strand could be on its own. The image behind the word is the making of a rope, and a rope is not made quickly. A rope is made by a sustained and deliberate process of bringing strands together, applying tension, allowing the twisting to create the kind of integrated strength that loose strands simply do not possess. Every year of your waiting season has been a strand. Every season of grief, of growth, of learning to trust when trust was hard, of choosing faithfulness when faithfulness cost you something real. Every season of discovering what you were made of when conditions stripped away everything that was not essential. Every one of those seasons has been a strand, and they have not been lying loose and disconnected beside each other. They have been braiding, slowly, invisibly, at a level you could not see from where you were standing. They have been integrating into something that has the kind of tensile strength that only the kava process can produce. The strength to carry what is coming. The strength to hold the weight of the thing that is now approaching without collapsing under it, the way an earlier version of you could not have done. You have not been delayed. You have been braided. You have not been overlooked. You have been integrated. You are not behind. You are almost complete. Let me put those two concepts together now, because together they say something to you that neither one can say alone. You've been living in Chronos time while being prepared in Kairos time. The clock on the wall has been measuring years, but the God who operates in Kairos has been assembling a moment. And the kava process, the binding together of every strand of your experience, has been building the version of you that is capable of stepping into that Kairos moment and sustaining what it carries. You were not ready 5 years ago. Not because you were insufficient, but because the rope was not yet complete. You were not ready 3 years ago, not because the promise was not real, but because the strands that needed to be woven in 3 years ago had not yet been gathered. And the you that will step across the threshold that this Friday represents is not the same you who first began believing for this. That you has been multiplied by the kava of every season since then. And what you are carrying now, the integrated, deepened, tested, refined version of the call that was placed in you, is something that the early version of the promise could never have held. You are not behind. You are being assembled. And I want to speak one more thing to you from this place, because it belongs in this section, and it connects everything that came before it to everything that is coming next. There is a season that the spiritual language of many traditions has a name for. It is sometimes called the wilderness season, and the wilderness is one of the most misunderstood places in the entire landscape of a chosen life. From the outside, the wilderness looks like punishment. It looks like abandonment. It looks like God has withdrawn and left you in a place that is difficult and barren, and without the provision and the community and the visible signs of forward movement that you need to feel okay. But the wilderness is not punishment. The wilderness is the place where the things that do not belong in what you are walking into get stripped away. It is the place where the dependencies on human approval, on visible progress, on the external markers of success that the world uses to determine whether a life is going well, get loosened enough that they can no longer control you. It is the place where the foundation of who you are gets tested at a depth that comfortable seasons simply cannot access. And it is the place that every person who has ever carried a significant calling has passed through before they were trusted with the full weight of what they were made to carry. The wilderness was not the end of your story. It was the making of it. And the Friday that is arriving is not arriving in spite of the wilderness you have walked through. It is arriving because of it, because the God who designs Kairos moments does not waste a single strand of the kava process. Not one season was accidental. Not one year was filler. Not one experience of loss or confusion or pressing against closed doors was outside the architecture of what has been being built in you and for you all along. What Chronos has been measuring as delay, Kairos has been building as a foundation. What the world has been reading as stagnation, heaven has been weaving as strength. And what you have been calling your wilderness, the appointed time has always known as your preparation. The thing that has been promised has not been canceled. It has not been given to someone else. It has not been retracted because the season ran long. What God has appointed, no delay in Chronos time can cancel. The appointed time is still coming. In fact, on the evidence of everything this message has been saying to you from the beginning, it has already arrived at the threshold. And you are the person who was prepared to receive it. Something is moving. And I do not mean that in the abstract, inspirational sense that sounds beautiful, but does not actually touch the ground of your everyday life. I mean it in the specific, practical, this is what it is going to look like sense. Because the chosen one who has been through what you have been through does not need more beautiful language about what is possible. You have had beautiful language. You have read the books and heard the sermons and watched the videos and collected the verses that speak to what is coming. What you need now, in this season, on the edge of this Friday, is specificity. You need someone to describe what the shift is actually going to feel like, what it is going to look like in the concrete reality of your daily life, and what you should and should not do as it begins to arrive. Because the chosen ones who miss the beginning of their breakthrough season are not the ones who stopped believing. They are often the ones who did not recognize what the beginning of a breakthrough actually looks like from the inside, because it rarely looks the way they imagined it would. So I want to do something very specific with you right now. I want to describe 3 areas of your life where something is already beginning to shift, and I want to describe it in enough detail that when you encounter it in real time, in the coming days, and specifically around this Friday, you will recognize it instead of dismissing it, because recognition is everything at the beginning of a new season. The person who recognizes the shift as it begins to arrive is the person who positions themselves to cooperate with it. The person who does not recognize it will walk right past it, looking for something that looks more like what they imagined a breakthrough should look like. The first area is your internal world, and specifically the quality of your inner atmosphere. Here is what is coming. There is going to be a morning, perhaps this morning, perhaps in the next few days, where you wake up and weight that has been the background frequency of your days for a long time is slightly lighter. Not gone, not replaced by euphoria or certainty or the feeling that everything has been resolved, but lighter, as if something that has been pressing on the interior of your chest has shifted position just enough that breathing feels marginally easier. This is easy to dismiss because it does not look like anything from the outside, and because the weight will likely return during the day in familiar forms. But I want you to mark that morning when it comes, because that lightening is not a coincidence, and it is not a mood fluctuation. It is the first perceptible sign that the atmospheric pressure around your life is beginning to change. Heaven does not announce the beginning of a new season with a fanfare that everyone can see. It announces it with an almost imperceptible shift in the internal weather of the chosen one who is standing at the threshold. What you should not do in that moment is analyze it into insignificance. The chosen one's mind, trained by years of managing hope carefully, will immediately want to qualify the feeling, to remind itself that one lighter morning does not mean the breakthrough has arrived, to protect itself from the vulnerability of actually believing that something is changing. I understand that impulse. It has served you in important ways. But in this moment, that protective analysis is going to work against you. What you should do instead is receive the lightning simply. Acknowledge it. Say to yourself quietly, I notice this is different, and then allow yourself to be curious about it rather than immediately skeptical of it. What you can trust in first area is this. The inner shift precedes the outer shift, always. In every chosen one story, in every account of a season turning, the internal atmosphere changed before the external circumstances changed. The peace arrived before the provision. The clarity came before the confirmation. The lightening in your chest is not wishful thinking. It is your spirit registering something that your eyes cannot yet see. Trust it, even for a moment. Trust it enough to receive it rather than manage it away. The second area is your relationships. And what is about to happen in that landscape is going to be both harder and better than you expect. Here is what is coming. Some of the connections that have been part of your life during this waiting season are going to begin to complete themselves naturally. Not dramatically, not with conflict or rupture in most cases, but with a quiet and mutual sense of having served their season in each other's lives. People who were companions for a chapter are going to begin drifting toward their own next chapters, and you are going to feel the space opening up where they were. This can feel like loss, even when it is actually transition. Even when the relationship completing itself is a sign that you are moving into territory that relationship was not designed to accompany you into. I want you to release those connections with gratitude rather than grief. Or, if grief comes, to allow the grief while still releasing. Because the space that opens when a chapter relationship completes is not empty space. It is prepared space. It is room that is being made for connections of a different kind. What is also coming in the relational area is the appearance of people who carry a frequency that matches where you are going rather than where you have been. You may have already noticed the beginning of this. A conversation with someone unexpected that felt strangely significant. An encounter that seemed like coincidence but left you thinking about it for days afterward. A person who understood something about you immediately that people who have known you for years have never quite grasped. These are not random. These are the relational provision of a new season beginning to arrive. The chosen one, who is moving into Kairos time, begins to attract people who are also operating in Kairos time. And those connections have a quality that is different from what you have experienced during the waiting season. They feel generative rather than draining. They feel like momentum rather than maintenance. What you should not do in this area is try to accelerate the process of releasing old connections or acquiring new ones. The transition in your relational landscape is going to happen at the pace that it is designed to happen. And forced movement in either direction will create friction that is not necessary. What you should do is stay present and curious. Notice who feels lighter to be around. Notice who consistently leaves you feeling more like yourself after an interaction. Notice who seems to be pointing in the same direction that you feel yourself being pulled toward. And begin, gently and without drama, to orient yourself toward those people. What you can trust in this second area is that you are not going to be left without the relational provision you need for what is coming. The God who designed the season has also designed the companionship for it. You are not going to walk into the next chapter alone. You are going to walk into it with people who were specifically prepared to be part of it, just as you were specifically prepared to be part of theirs. So, the third area is purpose and the clarity of direction. And this is the one that I know you have been waiting for the longest. Here is what is coming. The question that has been living in you for the length of this waiting season. The question of what you are specifically supposed to be doing and how and when and with whom. That question is not going to be answered all at once. I want to be honest with you about that because I respect you too much to give you a version of this that sets up an expectation that will then collide with reality in a way that discourages you. The full map is not going to be dropped into your lap on Friday morning. But what is coming is something that is, in some ways, more valuable than the full map. What is coming is the next clear step, a single, specific, unmistakable step forward that is going to become visible to you in a way that it has not been visible during the fog of the waiting season. The chosen ones in their breakthrough seasons almost always describe the same experience. Not a sudden, comprehensive revelation of their entire future, but a single door that becomes clear, a specific action that they feel equipped and called to take that they did not feel equipped and called to take the week before. A conversation they know they need to have, a skill they know they need to develop, a person they know they need to reach out to, a decision they have been circling for months that suddenly has a clarity and a rightness to it that cuts through the paralysis. That is the beginning of purpose becoming concrete. And it begins not with the full map, but with the first step becoming undeniable. What you should not do in this area is wait for the full picture before you move. The waiting for certainty instinct, which has been a reasonable protective reflex during a season of fog, becomes a liability the moment the first step becomes clear. Because The second step is only revealed in the act of taking the first one. The chosen ones who step into their breakthrough seasons step into them one visible step at a time, trusting that the next step will become visible when the current one has been taken. Waiting for all the steps to be visible before moving is not wisdom in this season. It is the old reflex of the waiting season, trying to operate in a kairos moment that is calling for movement. What you can trust in this third area is that the clarity that is coming is real clarity, not manufactured confidence, not positive thinking layered over continued confusion, but the genuine, settled, internal knowing of someone who has been prepared for exactly this moment and who is now standing close enough to it that the first step is becoming unmistakable. When it comes, you will know it, not because it feels safe, but because it feels true. And truth, in the body and the spirit of someone who has been through the kava process of a long preparation season, has a specific feeling that cannot be confused with anything else. Something is moving in all three of these areas simultaneously. The inner atmosphere is shifting, the relational landscape is transitioning, and the clarity of your next step is approaching. You are not imagining it. You are not manufacturing hope from nothing. You are a chosen one standing at the edge of a kairos moment, recognizing the signs of a season that is already in the process of changing. If you feel this in your body right now, if there is something in you that is resonating with what has just been described, not as wishful thinking, but as recognition, then I want you to type one word in the comments below. Type the word "I receive," not as a performance, not as a transaction, but as an act of agreement with what is already moving. Type "I receive," and in doing so, allow yourself to be someone who is open to what is already on its way to you. The three shifts that are moving towards you, in your inner world, in your relationships, and in the clarity of your purpose. Those shifts are not arriving into a person who is the same as the one who entered this season. I want you to understand that fully before we go any further. The person who is standing at the threshold of what this Friday is carrying is not the person who first walked into the wilderness. The waiting did not leave you unchanged, and the change it worked in you is not the damage of a person who has been through too much. It is the making of a person who has been through exactly enough. You have been formed. You have been shaped. You have been brought through a process that produced something specific in you. Something that has a name. And I want to give you that name right now because I believe you need to hear it. You are a cycle breaker. I want to sit with that name for a moment before I explain it, because it is not a casual label, and it is not inspirational language meant to make you feel better about a hard season. It is a precise description of what has been produced in you by the years you have walked through. A cycle breaker is someone who absorbs the weight of generational or systemic patterns. Patterns of lack, of fear, of broken trust, of deferred hope, of dreams that started and stopped in the lives of the people who came before them, and through the sustained faithfulness of their own journey, becomes the person in whom those patterns are interrupted. Not just managed, not just survived, interrupted permanently, so that what comes after them, the people they raise, the communities they influence, the lives they touch through what they carry, those lives are different because of what this person chose to do with their season of preparation. That is you. The years you have walked through have not just shaped you personally. They have been breaking a cycle, a pattern that has been running through your story, perhaps through your family story, perhaps through the community you come from, perhaps through the specific domain you have been called to serve for longer than you have been alive. And the fact that you did not walk away, the fact that you chose faithfulness over convenience, and depth over performance, and staying over leaving, even on the days when leaving would have been so understandable. That faithfulness is the thing that broke the cycle. It is already broken, not in the sense that everything is fixed, but in the sense that the pattern no longer has the same grip on the future that it had on the past. Because you walked through it differently. Because you became someone who could not be fully bent by what was designed to bend the people in your lineage before you. A cycle breaker does not always feel powerful. Often they feel the opposite. They feel the weight of what they are carrying more acutely than anyone around them. Because they are carrying not only their own story but the accumulated weight of everything that was placed on their shoulders by the generations and the systems that preceded them. That weight is real, and carrying it through a long season of preparation without being crushed by it is one of the most significant things a human being can do. You have done it, and what is coming toward you this Friday is, in part, the arrival of the recognition of that, not from the world necessarily, but from heaven. The Kairos moment that is approaching is, among other things, the moment when what you have been carrying begins to be carried differently, not by you alone, but by the fruit of what the cycle breaking has made possible. I want to take you through something now, a brief guided practice of imagination that I believe is going to allow you to feel in your body and your spirit what I am describing in language. I want you to find a still moment as you receive this. Even if you are moving, even if you are in a busy environment, find a still point inside yourself and follow me into this image. Picture yourself standing at a threshold. It is the doorway, wide enough for you to walk through with your arms open, and it stands between two distinct territories. Behind you is the landscape you have been walking through, the long fields of the waiting season. The places where the ground was hard and the sky was low, and the distance between where you were and where you were going seemed to keep expanding rather than contracting. You can see it clearly from where you are standing. You can see the years represented in that landscape, the long stretches of faithfulness, the places where you stopped and almost turned back, the places where the weight of what you were carrying became so significant that you had to set it down for a moment before you could lift it again. You can see all of it. And as you look at it now, from the threshold, you can see something you could not see while you were inside it. You can see the path, the unmistakable, deliberate, purposeful path that winds through all of it. You can see that there was never a moment when you were wandering without direction. There was never a stretch of that landscape that was random or wasted. Every step you took, even the ones that felt like they were going sideways or backward, was part of a path that was always leading here, to this threshold, to this doorway, to this exact moment. Now turn your gaze forward, through the threshold, into what is ahead. And I want you to notice something important. You cannot see the whole of it. The territory ahead is large, and its full extent is not visible from where you stand. But what you can see in the near distance, just beyond the threshold, is light. Not blinding light, not overwhelming light, but the kind of light that comes when a morning has finally broken after a night that was very long. The kind of light that makes the shapes of things visible again. After you have been navigating in the dark for so long that you almost forgot what it felt like to see clearly. That light is real. It is not a projection of your desire. It is the actual quality of the atmosphere in the territory you are about to step into. And now I want you to notice something about where you are standing. You are already at the threshold. You are not approaching it. You are not still in the middle of the landscape behind you. You are standing at the exact point where the two territories meet, and the only thing between you and the light ahead is the simple act of stepping forward. Not a leap, not a dramatic, effortful, everything on the line kind of movement. A step. The natural next movement of a person who has been walking for a long time and has finally arrived at the doorway they were walking toward. You are already there. You have been walking toward this threshold for the entire length of the season behind you, and you are already standing at it. That is where you are right now as you receive these words. Now, gently, let the image release. Come back fully into where you are, and carry with you the knowledge that what you just saw in that image is not metaphor for something distant. It is a picture of your actual position in this moment. You are at the threshold. You are a cycle breaker standing at the doorway of what the breaking of the cycle has prepared you to enter. I want to close this section with words that I mean as a blessing, not a formal one, not one that requires a particular response or that places any kind of obligation on you. Simply words of recognition offered to the specific person that this season has produced in you, to the one who kept going when there was no applause for the continuing. You were seen. Every morning, you chose to get up and carry what you were carrying for one more day. You were seen by the one who designed the season and who never once confused your perseverance for resignation. To the one who grieved quietly because there was no one in their immediate circle who had the capacity to hold the full weight of what the grieving was about. Your grief was not hidden, it was held by hands that are large enough to hold the kind of sorrow that comes from carrying a calling through conditions that are too small for it. To the one who questioned themselves in the dark and then chose to believe again in the morning, even when the believing felt thin. Your faith was not insufficient. It was exactly the kind of faith that the hard seasons require, not the faith that feels certain, but the faith that chooses to continue even when certainty is not available. To the one who is standing at this threshold right now, reading these words, feeling the recognition rising in them, and simultaneously feeling the old reflex to protect themselves from hoping too fully, you are allowed to hope fully now. The preparation is complete. The cycle is broken. The threshold is real. And the step that is waiting for you on the other side of this Friday is the step that the entire season has been building you toward. You are a cycle breaker. You are the one who absorbed the weight and came through with your integrity intact. You are the one who was shaped rather than shattered by the wilderness. And what is about to be placed in your hands is proportional to exactly what you have carried. May the lightness of what is coming reach you before it arrives, so that when it does, you are already open to receive it fully. May the relationships that are coming carry the quality of rest that the waiting season rarely gave you. May the clarity that is approaching have the feeling of coming home to something you have always known, but have not yet been able to fully inhabit. And may this Friday mark not just a moment, but a turning, a genuine, irreversible, heaven-designed turning toward everything that was appointed for you before the waiting began. You are blessed, not because everything is already resolved, but because you are a cycle breaker who is already standing at the threshold, and that is more than enough to receive what is coming next. You are standing at the threshold. You know that now in a way that you did not know it when this message began. And the question that belongs to this moment, the question that a cycle breaker, standing at the doorway of a Kairos season has every right to ask, is not whether the shift is real. You have already received enough in this message to know that the shift is real. The question that belongs to this moment is a practical one. What do I do right now? Not in a vague inspirational sense. Not in a way that sounds beautiful, but leaves you standing in the same place doing the same things with a slightly better attitude about them. But in a concrete, Actionable. This is what I actually do with my hands and my feet and my hours sense. Because the cycle breaker, who has been through the preparation season that you have been through, does not need more inspiration. You have been inspired. You need direction. And the direction that belongs to this specific threshold moment is what I am going to give you now. 3 areas of your life are shifting. We named them in the previous section: the inner atmosphere, the relational landscape, and the clarity of purpose. And for each of those 3 areas, there is a specific, practical, immediately actionable thing that you can begin doing today, not eventually, not when the season feels more settled, not when you have more certainty about exactly how everything is going to unfold, but today, in the actual hours of this actual day, that will position you to receive and cooperate with the shift that is already underway. I want to be clear about something before I give you these 3 actions. The actions I am about to describe are not the things that are going to make the breakthrough happen. The breakthrough is already happening. It is already moving towards you on a timeline that was set before you had any say in the matter. What these actions are going to do is ensure that when the breakthrough arrives, you are positioned to recognize it, receive it, and step into it rather than let it pass by while you are still oriented toward the waiting season that is ending. There is a difference between causing something and cooperating with something. And what I am giving you now are tools for cooperation, not tools for manufacturing what is already being sent. The first practical action belongs to the area of your inner world, and it is this. Beginning today, I want you to create what I am going to call a recognition record. It does not need to be elaborate. A notebook, a note on your phone, a voice memo that you send to yourself. The format does not matter. What matters is the practice. Every day, starting today and running through this Friday and beyond, I want you to write down or record one thing that happened during that day that felt different from the average day of the waiting season. It does not have to be dramatic. In fact, the most important things to record are going to be the small ones. The moment of unexpected peace in the middle of a stressful situation. The thought that arrived with an unusual clarity. The conversation that opened in a direction you were not anticipating. The morning where the weight felt slightly lighter. The idea that surfaced during the 7 minutes of the threshold protocol that felt like it came from somewhere beyond the usual range of your own thinking. One observation per day, written or recorded in your own words, without editing or qualifying. The reason this practice is so powerful in a breakthrough season is that breakthroughs almost never arrive in a single dramatic moment, the way we tend to imagine them. They arrive as a series of small recognitions that build on each other until the cumulative weight of them tips the scales of your perception toward a new reality. The recognition record is the tool that makes each small recognition retrievable so that you can look back at the end of a week and see not a collection of isolated incidents but a pattern, a direction, evidence accumulating in real time that the season has changed. And for a chosen one whose protective instincts have been trained by years of managing hope carefully, having evidence you wrote down with your own hand in the moment of recognition is one of the most powerful antidotes to the dismissive voice that will try to tell you that nothing is really changing. You will have your own record to answer it with. Begin the recognition record today. One entry. What felt different today? Even if the answer is only this message, write it down. The second, practical action belongs to the area of your relationships, and it requires a particular kind of courage that is different from the courage you have been using throughout the waiting season. The courage of the waiting season was largely the courage of endurance. The courage of staying when staying was hard. The courage of holding on when letting go would have been easier. The courage that is required now is different. It is the courage of initiation, and specifically, the initiation of one connection. I want you to think of one person in your life, or on the periphery of your life, who carries the quality of the territory you are moving into. Someone whose life, whose work, whose values, whose direction resonates with where you feel yourself being pulled. Someone who makes you feel more like the person you are becoming, rather than the person you have been managing to be during the waiting season. And I want you to initiate a real conversation with that person within the next 72 hours. Not a text that says, "Hey, we should catch up sometime." A real initiation, a specific invitation to connect, a genuine expression of something you appreciate about what they carry, or what they are doing, or what their life represents to you. It does not have to be long. It does not have to be perfectly worded, but it has to be real, and it has to be specific, and it has to come from the part of you that is already oriented toward the new season, rather than the part of you that is still managing the old one. The reason this action matters so much right now is that the relational provision of the new season is not going to arrive entirely through divine appointment without any participation on your part. Yes, there are connections that will find you without effort, and I told you about those in the previous section. But there are also connections that require you to take one step toward them, a step that signals to heaven and to yourself that you are genuinely ready to operate in the relational environment of the new season, rather than just waiting for it to build itself around you while you remain passive. The initiation of one real conversation is that signal. It is you saying, with your actions rather than just your prayers and your belief, "I am already moving into what is coming. I am not waiting for it to come to me entirely. I am taking one step toward it right now." One person, one real initiation, within the next 72 hours. That is the second practical action. The third practical action belongs to the area of purpose and clarity of direction, and it is the most specific of the three. I want you to take 30 minutes, not today necessarily, but within the next 3 days, and do something that might feel counterintuitive for someone in the practical mode of a new season beginning. I want you to write down the clearest version of what you believe you are carrying, not the polished, public-facing version, not the version that sounds impressive or that you would be comfortable sharing with a wide audience. The honest, unedited, interior version of what you believe you were put here to do and to be and to offer. Write it in the most direct language you can find. Not, "I think maybe I might be called to something in the area of," but "I am someone who was made to." Fill in that sentence with the most honest answer you have access to right now. Then write it again with even more specificity. Then write down one thing, one single thing, that you could do in the next 30 days that would move in the direction of that calling by even a small but real degree. This action matters because purpose clarity does not arrive fully formed in a moment of revelation and then stay permanently accessible without any maintenance on your part. Purpose clarity is something you have to actively engage with. You have to write it down. You have to say it out loud. You have to make it concrete enough that it can be acted upon rather than just felt. And the chosen one who does this work, who takes the 30 minutes to write the honest version of what they carry and identify one real step toward it, that person is creating the conditions for the full clarity to come. Because clarity responds to engagement. The more specifically you engage with what you believe you are carrying, the more specifically the next layer of clarity will reveal itself to you. The map does not drop into passive hands. Unfolds one step at a time to people who are actively moving in the direction they believe they were created to go. Write the honest version of your calling. Identify one real step. Take it within the next 30 days. That is the third practical action. Now I want to bring these three actions together and show you what they are collectively building. The recognition record is training your perception. It is teaching you to see the evidence of the new season as it arrives, rather than filtering it out through the protective habits of the waiting season. The relational initiation is training your participation. It is teaching you to be someone who moves toward the provision of the new season, rather than someone who only receives what arrives without effort. And the purpose engagement is training your direction. It is giving the clarity that is coming a concrete structure to inhabit when it arrives. 3 practices. All of them actionable today. None of them requiring perfect conditions, complete certainty, or the resolution of everything that has not yet been resolved. They are designed for a person who is at a threshold, not for a person who has already crossed it and is looking back from the other side. They are designed for exactly where you are. I also want to say something about the 7 minutes of the threshold protocol in relation to all 3 of these actions, because the connection is important. The recognition record will be fed by what surfaces during the 7 minutes of silence. The relational initiation will be informed by the clarity that the theta-gamma state, unlocked by the genius wave, makes accessible. And the purpose engagement will be deepened by the brainwave environment that the 7 minutes of intentional stillness creates. The genius wave is not a separate tool from the practical actions I have just given you. It is the inner environment that makes all 3 of them more effective, more clear, and more aligned with the actual frequency of what you are carrying. The 7 minutes of step 3 in the threshold protocol, done consistently with the genius wave as your companion, is the daily maintenance of the inner conditions that allow everything else I have described today to operate at full capacity. If you have not yet accessed the genius wave and you feel the resonance of what this message has been saying to you, the link is in the pinned comment beneath this video. $39, 90-day money-back guarantee. One link. The real protocol developed over 30 years of serious neuroscientific research. The tool that thousands of people in seasons that look like yours have used to access the brainwave state that makes the shift from the waiting season to the breakthrough season. Something they could feel and act on, rather than just believe in abstractly. And finally, in this section, I want to say something to the part of you that is feeling the weight of all of this. The part of you that heard 3 practical actions and felt not energized but tired. Because some of you are reading this at the end of a day that has already asked everything of you. Some of you are receiving this message from a place of genuine depletion. And the last thing you need is a list of things to do that adds to the weight of what you are already managing. So let me say this clearly. You do not have to do all 3 of these things perfectly or immediately or simultaneously. You do not have to perform your way into the new season. The Kairos moment that is approaching is not conditioned on your flawless execution of a protocol. It is conditioned on your willingness. And willingness, as I said at the very beginning of this message, is something you have already demonstrated simply by being here this far. The practical actions I have given you are not requirements. They are invitations. Invitations to cooperate with what is already coming. Take the one that feels most alive to you right now. Begin there, and trust that the one step you take in the direction of the new season today is enough to signal to heaven that you are ready to receive what it is sending. You are ready. The recognition record, the relational initiation, the purpose engagement. One step. Today. That is all that is required of you right now. And the Friday that is coming, with everything it is carrying for you, is going to meet a version of you who has already begun to move. We have come a long way together in this message. And I do not use the word together casually, because I am aware that what has happened over the course of these sections is not simply an information transfer. Something more than that has occurred. You came into this message carrying the weight of a season that has been long and demanding, and full of questions that did not have easy answers. And you have stayed through the naming of the grief, through the acknowledgement of the cost, through the science and the practice and the ancient language of kairos and kava, through the guided imagination of the threshold, and the practical actions of the new season. You have stayed, and that staying is not a small thing. It is, in fact, one of the most significant things about you. You are someone who stays, even when staying is hard, even when the words are landing in places that have been tender for a long time, even when part of you wanted to step away and protect yourself from the vulnerability of hoping again. You stayed, and I want to begin this final section by honoring that specifically, because it deserves to be named before anything else is said. The showing up that brought you here today, and the staying that has kept you through everything this message has asked you to receive, is the same quality that has carried you through every difficult season of your life. It is not glamorous. It is not the kind of thing that gets celebrated publicly or that shows up in the highlight reel of anyone's life. But it is the quality that heaven looks for when it is deciding who can be trusted with what is coming. The chosen ones are not chosen because they are the most talented or the most visible or the most celebrated. They are chosen because they are the ones who show up and stay. And you have proven in this message and in every season that preceded it that you are exactly that kind of person. I want to tell you something that I mean with complete sincerity. All across the world right now, as you receive these words, other chosen ones are walking into this exact same message. They are in different countries, different time zones, different seasons of their own preparation. Some of them are further along in their breakthrough than you are. Some of them are just beginning to recognize the signs that you have been living with for years. Some of them are in the same specific season you are in right now, standing at the same threshold, carrying the same weight, feeling the same mixture of hope and exhaustion, and quiet, stubborn belief. And every single one of them, regardless of where they are in their journey, needed someone to name what they have been living through, to give language to the grief and the waiting and the specific ache of carrying a calling through conditions that are too small for it. You are not alone in this room. You are never alone in this room. The community of chosen ones who are walking through their own version of what you have been walking through is vast, and it extends far beyond anything the algorithm of any single platform could map or measure. I want to give you one final practice before we close, and this one is not about doing, it is about releasing. Because as much as the new season requires the practical actions I gave you in the previous section, it also requires something that the waiting season has made very difficult for many chosen ones. It requires the putting down of what you have been carrying that was never meant to go with you into what is next. I want you to take a slow breath, and as you exhale, I want you to picture yourself at the threshold one more time, the doorway we visited earlier in this message. And this time, I want you to notice that you are not standing at it empty-handed. You are carrying things. Some of them are yours to carry through the doorway. The gifts, the character, the wisdom earned through the hard seasons, the compassion that was deepened by your own experience of need, the faith that held even when it was thin, the specific calling that was placed in you before the waiting began. Those things go with you. They are yours, and they belong in the territory ahead. But there are other things you are carrying that do not belong through the doorway. The shame of seasons that took longer than you expected. The weight of other people's timelines and other people's opinions about what your life should look like by now. The protective layer of managed hope that served you during the waiting season, but will constrict you if you carry it into the new one. The self-doubt that was installed by the gap between what you believed was coming and what had not yet arrived. The weariness that accumulated from years of carrying more than was designed to be carried by one person alone. The grief that has not yet been fully released because you have not yet had permission to let it go. I want to give you that permission right now. You are allowed to set those things down at the threshold. You are allowed to leave them at the doorway and walk through without them. Not because they were not real, not because the years did not genuinely cost what they cost, but because the territory ahead is not designed to be entered under that weight. The new season has provision for you that is calibrated to a person who is free to receive it, not a person who is still managing the accumulated heaviness of the season that is ending. So I want you to picture yourself in this moment, physically setting down each of those things at the threshold. One by one, the shame, the comparison, the managed hope, the self-doubt, the weariness, the unresolved grief, setting each one down deliberately, not throwing them away in denial, but placing them at the threshold with the acknowledgement that they were real and that they no longer need to travel with you. And then I want you to picture yourself stepping forward, through the doorway, into the light that we saw on the other side when we visited the threshold earlier in this message. One step, unburdened by what you just set down, carrying only what is genuinely yours to carry into the new season, and standing for just a moment in the first breath of a territory that has been prepared for you. That is not imagination for its own sake. That is a spiritual act of genuine release and genuine reception. And I want you to carry the feeling of it with you as you move through the rest of today and into the days that are leading toward this Friday. Now I want to say something about the people in your life who need what you carry. Because the cycle breaker who steps through the threshold does not step through it only for themselves. They step through it for the people who are coming behind them, the ones who are watching from a distance to see if it is possible to walk through a long and demanding season and come out on the other side with your calling intact. The ones who need a living demonstration that the God who promises Kairos moments is not speaking hypothetically. The ones who are in the early stretches of their own waiting season and who need to see someone who has been in the later stretches of it walk through the doorway with their faith and their integrity and their hope still alive. Your breakthrough is not only yours, it belongs to the circle of people that your life touches, and the more fully you receive what is coming, the more effectively it becomes available to them through you. That is what it means to be a cycle breaker. The breaking does not stop with your own story. It ripples forward into every story that your story has the ability to touch. If this message has landed somewhere real in you today, if something in these words has named what you have been living through in a way that has created even a small degree of movement in the atmosphere of your inner world, I want to ask you to do something. Not for me. Let me be clear about that. Not to help the channel or to support the work in any transactional sense, but because there is another chosen one somewhere in the world who is going to wake up this Monday without anyone to name what they are living through, without anyone to tell them that the grief they are carrying is not a sign that something is wrong with them, without anyone to give language to the kava process that is producing in them something they cannot yet see. And this message can reach them. It can find them at the moment they need it, the way it found you at the moment you needed it. But only if the people it has already reached choose to send it forward. Like this video, share it with the one person in your life who you know is standing at their own version of this threshold. Subscribe so that when the next word comes, it finds you without delay. And if this message has given you something that you feel moved to honor in a more tangible way, there is the option to support this work through a donation, and you will find the information for that in the description below. Every contribution, regardless of size, is what makes it possible to keep putting these words into the world for the chosen ones who need them. And I want to name the Genius Wave one final time, not as a closing sales point, but as a genuine acknowledgement of what it is. If somewhere in the middle of this message, in the section where the science and the spiritual met each other and created a bridge between the frequency you carry and the brainwave state that makes it neurologically accessible, something in you said yes. If there was a recognition that what was being described was not just interesting, but relevant to exactly where you are right now, then the Genius Wave is waiting for you in the pinned comment below. It is not for everyone, but if it is for you, you already know it. And the Friday that is coming will be met by a version of you who is more internally clear, more neurologically prepared, and more receptively positioned than the version that would have shown up without it. The link is in the pinned comment. One link, the real tool, $39, 90-day guarantee. And the only question is whether you are ready to give 7 minutes a day to the preparation of the inner world that everything else in your new season is going to depend on. You have been faithful in the long season. You have been a stayer. You have been a cycle breaker who absorbed what was placed on you and came through with your calling intact. And what is on the other side of this threshold, what this Friday is carrying toward you, is proportional to exactly that faithfulness. Not because you earned it in a transactional sense, but because the God who designs Kairos moments does not waste a single strand of the kava process. Every year was a strand. Every season was a strand. And the rope that has been braided from all of it is strong enough to hold everything that is about to be placed in your hands. Step through the doorway. You have already set down what needed to be set down. You are already at the threshold. The only movement required now is the step forward that you were always going to take, the one that this entire season has been building you toward. Friday is not just a day on the calendar. For you in this season, it is a Kairos moment. And Kairos moments do not announce themselves to everyone. They announce themselves to the ones who were prepared to hear the announcement. You heard it. You stayed for it. You received it. Now step forward.